I am starting this at 1:23 p.m. I will check back in at the end. Welcome back to Every Disney Movie Ever. My name is Jess and I'm watching Every Disney Movie Ever. This is the REWATCH series, and today I'm talking about Peter Pan. Peter Pan is a 1953 animated theatrical release, and I've covered everybody already in previous videos, so they're just going to be listed and linked in the description like always. Peter Pan is based off a play and a novel called Peter Pan or The Boy Who Couldn't Grow Up, or Peter and Wendy by J.M. Barrie, released in 1904, 1911, and 1928 respectively as the play, the book, and then the actual publication written version of the play. So that's that order. The play was an instant success. It has grown. It's normally never done in its original format anymore. It's a lot of pantomime versions or musicals that are more popular to do now of Peter Pan. J.M. Barrie created the character when he was telling stories to his friends' sons. One of the boys' names was Peter, and the Greek god Pan, that has to do with Pan, is how Peter Pan came to be. When that person died, he actually unofficially adopted those kids. That's how much of a bond he had with them. It was a very beautiful story. The play and book, I guess, slightly differ because J.M. Barrie was constantly like fixing the story or changing it slightly in different ways. But for the most part, they're the same. So shall we compare the play to the movie? Peter listens to Mrs. Darling's bedtime stories by the open window. One night he's spotted, and in his escape he loses his shadow. When he returns, Wendy assists with his shadow and he invites her to Neverland. Wendy, John, Michael, and Peter head for Neverland. Once in Neverland, a cannon shoots them out of the air, Toodles almost kills Wendy, and the boys build her a house to recuperate it. John and Michael become like the Lost Boys, and Wendy assumes the role of the mother figure. Peter takes the Darlings on an adventure to save Tiger Lily, who's being held captive by Captain Hook. Peter is wounded and believes he will die, but a bird lets him use her nest as a boat, and he sails home. In return for saving her, Tiger Lily and her tribe protect Peter's home from the next pirate attack. Wendy starts to fall in love with Peter and asks how he feels about her, and he claims to be her faithful son. Ouch. Wendy decides it's time for her and her brothers to go back to England. They're captured by Captain Hook, and Hook poisons Peter's medicine. Tinkerbell tells Peter that the kids were taken and drinks the poison herself. Tinkerbell can survive so long as children believe in fairies. In the original play, Peter Pan would break the fourth wall and ask the audience to clap if they believed in fairies. Peter mimics the ticking crocodile and sets the Lost Boys free, defeats the pirates and Captain Hook. They use the boat to sail back to London, where they return home and Mrs. Darling adopts all of the Lost Boys. She says she'll adopt Peter, but Peter is too afraid to become a man. It is hinted that Mrs. Darling knows Peter Pan from her childhood. Peter promises to return for Wendy every spring, and the final scene of the play is 1 year later in Neverland in springtime, and Wendy is there, and she is packing to go back to England, and Peter has forgotten Tinkerbell and the Lost Boys and Captain Hook and doesn't understand why Wendy wants to take him back with her. And the narrator says if Peter just could get the hang of things, his cry might become to live would be an awfully great adventure. The end. 4 years after Barrie wrote this, he added when Wendy grew up an afterthought, and it explains how once Wendy grew up, she married a lost boy, and her daughter Jane had a relationship with Peter, and then once Jane grew up, her daughter had a relationship with Peter, and the cycle just went on to continue. The film stars Bobby Driscoll, Catherine Beaumont, Hans Conried, Bill Thompson, Paul Collins, Tommy Lusk, Tom Conway, and Heather Angel. Bobby Driscoll plays Peter Pan and is best known for So Dear to My Heart, Treasure Island in this. Catherine Beaumont plays Wendy, and I covered her in the video about Alice in Wonderland. The link will be in the description. Hans Conried plays Captain Hook and Mr. Darling. He's best known for The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T, The Hobbit, My Friend Irma, and this. Bill Thompson plays Mr. Smee, and I covered him in the video about Alice in Wonderland. The link will be in the description. Paul Collins plays John and is best known for Instinct, Dave, Executive Decision, and this. Tommy Lusk plays Michael and is best known for this. Tom Conway plays the narrator, and he's best known for Cat People, The Falcon Strikes Back, The Seventh Victim, and I Walked with a Zombie. Heather Angel plays Mrs. Darling and is best known for Suspicion, Bulldog Drummond Escapes, and this. In 1935, Disney wanted this to be a second feature, but Paramount owned the live-action film rights. In 1939, Disney bought the animation film rights. For a long time, he wanted the backstory of Peter Pan to start the film, but then decided they should just jump right into the shadow, because that's where the story really begins. Jack Kinney was directing for a long time. The film was put on hold because of the war, and then when it was finally resuming, it was then put on hold again for Cinderella. Jack Kinney was the director at the time and was asked not to focus so hard on the script and just certain sections, so certain sections could start to be animated right away in the essence of time. And then when he met with Walt, he had a 2.5-hour presentation at which Disney said, "I've been thinking a lot about Cinderella." Production resumed in 1949 in full force, and there were a lot of scenes that were either floated around or were part of it and taken out or were discussed, etc., including Nana going with them to Neverland, Mr. and Mrs. Darling finding the shadow, John not going with them to Neverland, Tinkerbell betraying them of her own decision. She decides to go tell Captain Hook where they are. Captain Hook dying was in one of the versions. What else? I'm gonna check my notes. Get off me. Eating an imaginary dinner, poisoning Pan, Tink dying, more mermaid and pirate scenes, and a booby trap cove. Once again, they used live action reference footage for the animators, and all of the actors did their live action characters reference footage, except Roland Dupree was hired to do a lot of Pan's flying and big acrobatic live action reference footage, and Margaret Kelly was hired to do Tinkerbell's live action reference footage because Tink doesn't talk, so they needed someone to do it, and the woman who did that was Margaret Kelly. Most songs are written by Sammy Cahn and Sammy Fain. The film was released in February of 1953 to very high praise. It was a very popular film. It made $7 million off a $4 million budget. It currently holds a 79% on Rotten Tomatoes. In recent years, meaning probably the last, I'd want to say 50 years? Last 50 years? It has come under controversy because of an obvious reason, which is the absolutely terrible and stereotypical and racist way the Native Americans are portrayed in the film. I don't think I have to explain why this is wrong. I think at this point in my group and on this channel and in our community, we understand why the Native Americans in this film are absolutely terribly portrayed. I don't think I have to say anything else about that. It is an absolutely appropriate controversy. It's a terrible thing about the film. As I'm sure you saw in the thumbnail, we own the 2-disc Platinum Edition released in 2007. I watched all the special features for you. Let's get started. On disc 1, the first special feature is a Tinkerbell sneak peek. This is the year that Tinkerbell, the standalone film, the first one, was being released, and it was a cute sneak peek. The next 2 features were simple, the first being Disney Song Collection. You could pick a song that was in the movie and it would jump to that point in the movie and have the lyrics on the bottom of the screen so you could sing along. It was very cute. The section after that was Peter's Playful Prank, and it was like a storybook about Peter pranking Captain Hook. It was a very simple story. The last feature on disc 1 is an audio commentary hosted by Roy Disney, who, I'm gonna be perfectly honest, sounds completely unthrilled to be doing the audio commentary, but it's not related. I mean, it's related to the film because they're talking about Peter Pan, but it has nothing to do, it doesn't go scene by scene. It has nothing to do with what's going on in the movie, what they're talking about. So it just goes along with the movie as they talk. So it's not really a commentary, it's hard to explain. Anyway, they have, so Roy Disney hosts, then they have Leonard Maltin, the film historian, John Canemaker, Jeff Curdy, Frank Thomas, Ollie Johnston, Mark Davis, Ward Kimball, an excerpt of something that Walt said, Margaret Carey, and Catherine Beaumont. They all have audio clips from those people during interviews they did throughout their life about the film. It was pretty interesting, but they didn't talk about anything that I haven't already told you. The first section on disc 2 is called Music and More. It's got a deleted song called The Pirate Song, which is very similar to Working for Captain Hook. That song, it's trying to entice the Lost Boys to come work for Captain Hook. It's very similar, it's just a little bit longer and it's got more verses in it, I think. The next was the Lost song, and it was Neverland, Never Neverland by the Sherman Brothers. And there's also a music video to go with it, performed by Paige O'Hara. It's very awkward. It's actually pretty awkward to watch. And then the final thing is a music video by this group called the T-Squad, singing The Second Star to the Right, and that is the most awkward. Games and activities is the next section, and the first thing is the English read-along, which just plays the movie with really fancy subtitles, and it highlights it almost like a sing-along, but you're supposed to be reading with it. I don't know. And the next section is called Camp Neverland, Train to be a Lost Boy, and the first thing is Smee's Sudoku Challenge, which was cool. I like Sudoku, but it was really simplified. It was only 4 things, so it was really easy to do. But it was a hook, Captain Hook's face, a crocodile, and I forgot what the other thing was. A sword? An anchor. And then the next challenge was target practice. And it was basically you threw stones at pirates instead of the Lost Boys. And the third one was Tink's Fantasy Flight. And you have to fly and avoid things. They were cute. The next section is Backstage Disney, which starts with You Can Fly, the making of Peter Pan. And this pretty much has talked about everything I've already talked about, but it really focuses on the live action reference footage and Bobby and Catherine, which I really enjoyed. It was a lot of fun little clips and pictures of them. The next section is called In Walt's World, Why I Made Peter Pan, and it is an article that Disney wrote for some magazine, I think, about why he made Peter Pan, and he discusses how, about the first time he saw Peter Pan performed and how he was in Peter Pan, the play, as a child, and how he came to make the film. And it was like a dramatic reenactment and also like some dude reading as well. It was very interesting. The next section is called Tinkerbell: A Fairy's Tale, and it really just talks about how influential Tinkerbell is, how big of a deal she became, how she became pretty much like a goodwill ambassador of Disney. Like, I mean, at the beginning of fireworks or end of fireworks, she like flies across Disneyland and Disney World. They do it in both, and I'm sure they do it in other countries as well, and just how big of a deal she became and how important she is as an icon. Next was the Peter Pan That Almost Was, which discusses all of those scenes I have already talked about that were possibly going to be in the film, like Nana going to Neverland and John staying behind, etc. Next was the art gallery section, which we know at this point was production stills, concept art, etc. It was stunning. Loved them. Next was the Peter Pan story, which was a 1952 featurette for television, if I'm not mistaken. And it basically just like went around the studio and showed what each department did for the film. It was very interesting, and I actually really enjoyed that. The last special feature on disc 2 is called Peter Pan's Virtual Flight, and it's basically just an animated, but like a little bit more realistic of animation, flight through London into Neverland, and then through some like adventure type stuff in Neverland. It's literally you just like watch it fly. You don't have to do anything. There are a lot of adaptations of Peter Pan. One of my favorites is actually a 2003 live action version starring Jeremy Sumpter. I adore that movie. It's not Disney, but if you haven't seen it, go see it. Jason Isaacs? Come on, Lucius Malfoy's in the movie. He's Captain Hook and Mr. Darling, obviously, because that's tradition. Anyway, there's also Return to Neverland, which was a sequel about Peter and Jane. There's the Tinkerbell series of films, Jake and the Neverland Pirates. A lot has sprung off from Peter Pan. There's Peter Pan Jr., right? It's the musical for middle schools and stuff. And then there was a live action adaptation announced, and recently it was announced that it was probably going to be released on Disney+. In my original video, link in the description, I discussed how I always loved Nana, Mr. Darling's really mean, the girls being super jealous of all the other girls, and their relationship with Peter is so annoying because Peter's a bad character and he doesn't grow at all in the film, really. I also discuss the racism and the stunning animation. I have new notes. The first time we see Peter Pan, his face gets lit up by Tinkerbell in the most horror film flashlight under the face moment, and every time I'm like, oh my god, he's going to be horrifying. Oh my goodness. Yikes. Yikes. Captain Hook takes blatant advantage of Tinkerbell being sad and blames Wendy and not Peter for being a total turd blossom. That's all I'm saying. Captain Hook is terrible and takes advantage of ladies. There's a hidden Mickey. Found a hidden Mickey on my own, y'all. It was exciting. Yeah. And then Peter blushes for Tiger Lily and no one else, so I'm led to assume he has feelings for Tiger Lily and none of the other girls in the film, but I don't really care because Peter Pan's kind of trash can garbage. Also, I'm sad that in every... My dog is barking. Ignore it. I'm kind of over it. I'm sad that in every, like, adaptation of the film, Peter never, there's never a happy ending. Like, let Peter go home. Let Peter fall in love with Wendy. I kind of want that. I also wanted to let you guys know, every time I sit down to watch Peter Pan, I hope to like it more than the last time I watched it. And I just don't. Peter Pan, I did enjoy it a little bit more this time than the last time I watched it for this series. Only because I went in knowing that Peter Pan's kind of a garbage character and that the racism is in the film. So I enjoyed it a little bit more to be like, oh yeah, it's magical and it's fun, but it's still not the best. Like, it kind of has a, it has a plot, but it's also, and it goes by fast, but just, I don't know. It's not amazing, you know? Okay, sorry. That's all I have for Peter Pan. I think I'm gonna give it like, I don't know, maybe another 6, but it's not as bad as like Bambi or Alice in Wonderland. But it's definitely like, is it worth a 7? Yeah, okay. 7 Lost Boys out of 10. Our total movie count is, well, our original movie count is, wow, I do that every time. Our original movie count is, obviously Parent Film Card Count don't count in the rewatch series because I've already counted them. If you want to keep up with the movie I'm watching when, follow me on Instagram or Twitter and find out what movie I'm watching when. I put up videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Until next time, comment, subscribe, and watch live. You are so you do, and don't be Captain Hook about it. It is 2:45, an hour and 22 minutes? An hour and 22 minutes. It's actually pretty short for a rewatch. Killed it.